Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Why Music Podcast, the podcast where we explore different musicians and their music throughout history. Today, we're going to learn about someone who, well, to be honest, we don't really know much about them, but we're going to try and understand a little bit more about the world that this person might have lived in to help us to understand who this person might have been. So today, we're going to learn about John Blanke. The story of John Blanke starts off with a young woman who many of you might have heard of before. Her name was Catherine of Aragon. Now, Catherine was Spanish, and as customs were at that time, in order to strengthen alliances between countries, young princes and princesses were often married to each other. Catherine was to be married to Prince Arthur, who was the oldest son of King Henry VII of England. She travelled to meet him and to marry him in 1501, and in her entourage, allegedly, was this man by the name of John Blanke. The first historical reference we have of John Blanke is from an old bookkeeping record in December 1507, when he was paid 20 shillings for the month of November. Well, what was he being paid for? That's the question. Well, he was a trumpet player, and actually one of 8 royal trumpet players at that time. In that record, it states, "Item to John Blanke, the Blacke Trumpet." This is actually the first black person for whom we have a name and a picture of in England. And guess what? He was a musician. How cool is that? Whenever someone asks if there are any black people in England, now you know that we've been here for hundreds of years. In fact, it was actually quite normal for European rulers to employ musicians from Africa all the way back from the 12th century. As a royal trumpeter, John was actually paid pretty well. It's estimated he would make about twice as much as the average farmer and about 3 times as much as the average servant. Just to show you how little we know about John, we don't even know when he was born. If you look him up, his birth and death dates are usually given as 1501 to 1511 or 1512. Now, of course, John wasn't a royal trumpeter when he was 10 or 11 years old. But this actually tells us quite a lot about the time. When you think about it, common folk at that point in history weren't recording their lives online like we do today, and many people weren't even able to read. Even if things were recorded in some way, it's been well over 500 years, and records get destroyed, lost, or simply just decay over time. So the 10 or 11 years or so that we know about John's life actually sits inside of the Renaissance period of European classical music. During that time, people such as Joaquin Perez were writing music, and a few decades later, you have people like Claudio Monteverdi, Giovanni Palestrina, and William Byrd. At this point in Western European classical history, bar lines weren't really used that much, and semi-breves, or whole notes as you might call them, were really common. The printing press was invented by Johannes Gutenberg only 60 years before that, and so printed music was slowly beginning to spread around Europe. In terms of the instruments that might have been played, some of the common instruments in Europe at that time were violins, viols, recorders, harps, and clavichords. There's actually even a record of a clavichord being bought by Henry VII's wife, Elizabeth, in 1502. The kind of trumpet that John would have been playing wouldn't look like some of the trumpets that you're used to seeing today, the ones with 3 valves. It probably would have been a natural trumpet made from a single coiled tube, and John would have had to use his lips to make a few different notes. This is what it might have sounded like. Something that we do know about John's life is that he actually played at the funeral of Henry VII in 1509, and he played at the coronation of Henry VIII later on that year. He actually successfully negotiated a pay rise from 8p a day to 16p a day. The only image we have of him is from 1511, where he's playing the trumpet, riding a horse, to help commemorate the birth of King Henry VIII's son, who was born on New Year's Day in 1511. The last thing that we know about John was that he got married in 1512, and Henry VIII sent him a gown of violet cloth and also a bonnet and a hat as a wedding gift. Now this is crazy because remember, this is exactly the same Henry VIII that beheaded 2 of his wives. So I guess John must have been a really valuable musician to Henry VIII and to his court. What happened after that, we actually don't really know. Perhaps he was killed in battle, but let's try and end this podcast on a positive note. Let's just say he retired and lived out the rest of his days with his wife and children, playing his trumpet, and was a positive influence to many other black musicians around him at that time. So before we go, I have a few questions for you. Question number 1. What do you think it was like to play the trumpet for King Henry VIII and for King Henry VII? Question number 2. Why do you think we don't have many records of any other black people around at that time? And question number 3. Do you think that John Blanke was actually his real name? So before you go, I'm going to leave you with this little fact. Tell me something good. During the same time that we have records of John Blanke's life, something really fascinating was happening hundreds of miles away, or thousands, I should say, in Italy, or more specifically in Rome, and even more specifically than that, at Vatican City itself. During the time between 1508 and 1512, Michelangelo himself was painting the Sistine Chapel. So I've actually got a bonus fact for you today. Remember in season 1, episode 1, we learned all about Samuel Coleridge Taylor and the blue plaque that was put on his house in South London so that everyone who walked past can remember and can learn a little bit about his life and his music. Well, on the 14th of January 2022, a blue plaque was unveiled at Greenwich Palace which says this: John Blanke, 1507 to 1512, trumpeter of African origin, employed in the courts of Henry VII and Henry VIII at a Tudor palace on this site. Thank you for listening to this episode. I really hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. Now, I can't exactly tell you to go and listen to some of John Blanke's music because for one, we don't even know if he wrote his own music, and two, of course, there are no recordings of John Blanke ever playing. But what I can do is suggest a few trumpet players for you to listen to. Check out Terence Blanchard, Dolly Jones, Miles Davis, or Sheila Maurice Gray. So until next time, be good to yourselves, check out some of these trumpet players I mentioned, and peace.